Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Unbridled Leadership Lab. So super excited to have you here today. We do these every month, so please do register and come along to any of the other ones that you want to. Let me just start sharing my screen and let's get going. So today's topic is the 3 mistakes leaders make that unintentionally destroy team dynamics and how to create game-changing teams instead. It's obviously a topic that's resonated with quite a lot of people because we had about 60 people, as I said, sign up for today. So very excited about that. So let's just start. So what are we going to do for the next 45 minutes? Any of you have met me before know that a lot of my work is inspired by nature. So we're really going to unpack really how some of nature's wisdom can help us discover and be applied to creating and improving team dynamics in our business. I'm going to give you some really practical, actionable strategies to help you create dynamic teams. And we're going to have a bit of collaborative insight and share some ideas between us because I think there's almost so much richness in what we can learn from each other. So why do we need to master team dynamics? I always talk about teamwork being the competitive superpower that we have in business. And I truly believe that. And so many of the organizations and teams that I work with really aren't harnessing teamwork to its best effect. And so I pulled together here 8 reasons that I believe right now why we need to master team dynamics. And the first is this skills obsolescence is increasing. And what do I mean by that? What it's showing is the average duration of some of the skills that we're developing is often only 2 to 2.5 years. And if you think about it, one of the big challenges for us right now is for those of us with children that might be at university age is what to go and study at university. Because often by the time you've got out of a course for 3 or 4 years, what you went to study has fundamentally changed in that time. Just think about people that were studying marketing at the advent of Facebook. They went to university looking at traditional or the old traditional styles of marketing, and then it all moved to digital and social media. So we're really seeing this acceleration of skills changing. And just more recently, in terms of ChatGPT, I don't know how many of you are using those in your business. It's fundamentally changed the way that I run my business. I don't have to spend hours and hours writing. I can go and get some ideas from ChatGPT that just speeds up the process. So we're seeing a lot of jobs shifting and altering. I actually think this is a good thing because I think in terms of team dynamics, it means it gives our team more time to actually do the more interesting work and not having to do perhaps some of the grunge repetitive jobs because we can get those automated. And that's great because it leaves people more time to build relationships. And we'll get onto that a bit later. Right now as well, we've got so many complex problems happening in the workplace that require collaborative solutions. So it's really important that we get all of our teams working together as one, focused on the same outcome, and really taking accountability and responsibility for what they want to do. The traditional models are failing to meet our current needs. And I'm a massive proponent of the fact that the old structures, the old hierarchical structures of how we run and lead teams just aren't working anymore. And we need a new solution. So this is why I'm saying the traditional models are failing. And this is why teams need new frameworks for success and this continual need for reinvention. I've just recently been studying and being trained to become a reinvention practitioner. And the reason I did that was some of the latest stats I came across were that 20% of businesses are reinventing themselves every single year. We know that our teams are looking for stability and certainty, and yet we're living in an environment where things need to continually change. How do we help our team members navigate that change continually? Importantly, trust levels are at an all-time low. And I just wanted to share some stats here that PwC recently put out because they were talking about high trust organizations experiencing a 50% increase and higher productivity than low trust organizations. And also, these higher trust organizations retain top talent 76% more effectively. So this is the difference between having low and high trust in your organization. And then, just to top it all, the latest Gallup statistics on the state of the workplace show that only 10% of UK team members are highly engaged, which means that 90% of your workforce aren't working at their optimum capacity. And indeed, of those 90%, 13% are actually actively sabotaging your business. So we really need to master team dynamics so that we can create more highly engaged teams, because actually these highly engaged and energized teams help us increase profitability by a staggering 21% and a 17% increase in productivity. The other fundamental underpinning thing for me on team dynamics is that team members want to be connected to a purpose. And in 2025, a staggering quarter of the workplace, so 25% of the workplace, are Gen Z. And they have little or no tolerance for poor management. And what they're looking for is a really strong connection to mission and purpose, because they want to go and work and feel like they're doing something that matters. And then, of course, as you'll all be aware, we're seeing increasing competition for resources in the workplace, whether it's time, energy, or money. We've got a real challenge going on there. These are some of the fundamental reasons why we need to look at mastering team dynamics and why this is critical right now. I'm curious, just if anyone wants to write in the chat, do you resonate with those ideas? Is there anything else that you'd like to add and think that should be in there? You just stop sharing a moment and come in. How do any of those resonate with people? Or just you're a small group, just if you don't want to type, just say, yeah. Georgina says definitely, yeah. So we're all on the right page. Hurrah. So who am I and why should you listen to me? And some of you I know, some of you I've never met before. So just indulge me for just a quick moment while I share a little bit about me. My name's Julia Felton. I'm a leadership and team engagement specialist. I've worked extensively in the corporate world, and for the last 10 years I've been running my own business. And I'm really passionate about teamwork. And I think what's interesting is that it wasn't always the case. Actually, when I left the corporate world and I'd had a global team of 35 people, I was like, hurrah, how exciting. Now I get to run my own business and I don't have to deal with the challenges of teams. However, what a foolish thought that was, because even running your own business, and I've now got team members that work with me, what I realized initially when it was just me out in the beginning was I actually really missed the energy of being with other people. So I'm really passionate about challenging the status quo and inspiring leaders to be the difference, and to create workplaces where the team feel engaged and energized and where everyone is aligned behind a shared purpose. And I didn't realize how powerful working in an organization or a business that had a great business culture was, and where the team dynamics were excellent, until I went to freelance into an organization where they had a really toxic culture. And I didn't want to go to work any day. And I'm usually a pretty super motivated and engaged team member. And I was like, wow. And this is the reality, that most people are going to a workplace that they don't really want to be in. And this is why, as Gallup statistics show, we've got so many people disengaged in the workplace. And how do I help companies with their teamwork and developing their leadership skills? That's through helping people step out of their comfort zone and reconnect with their inner brilliance. And I do that through a combination of workshops, seminars, and retreats, consulting, and mentoring. I'm also the author of 2 books there. And for those of you that I haven't met before, because I'm always liking to challenge the status quo and get people to do differently, some of my leadership and teamwork interventions, I bring people to the farm where I'm based, and people work with my horses. And yes, horses are masters at teaching you leadership, because they don't sugarcoat the feedback. If you're not an inspiring and compelling leader, they're not going to go with you. And actually, neither will your team, but they're usually a little bit too polite to tell you that. So let's look at the 3 mistakes that leaders make that unintentionally harm team dynamics. And the first of those is the silo syndrome. And what does this look like? It's about creating rigid hierarchies and departmental barriers. And the unintended impact of this is that we have limited interaction between our team members and only sporadic collaboration when it's needed. And we're going to delve into each of these in a minute. So I'm just going to give you the high-level overview of each of them right now. The second mistake is what I call the control trap. And what does this look like? It looks like maintaining traditional command and control leadership in an era where actually we need what I call shared leadership, where the leader is able to and feels comfortable to share the leadership with other people within the team. And we need this because in the industrial age, one leader could know everything. Those were the days before the internet. And the amount of information that we had access to was quite limited. Now the internet comes along, information is available freely. And so there's just no way that one leader can know everything that's going on. And so what's the impact of this? The unintended impact of leaders trying to keep control of everything is stifled creativity and reduced engagement. And then the third mistake leaders make is what I call the burnout blind spot. And what this looks like is about ignoring the natural rhythms that happen in business and ignoring our team's well-being. And we know one of the biggest challenges for leaders right now is this balance of how do you balance team well-being with performance. So it's this fulcrum that you're trying to balance between getting the business results, but also ensuring that our team members are working effectively and we're caring for their well-being. Because when we don't pay attention to this burnout blind spot, we find that our teams get exhausted and we experience decreased performance. And it's really insidious. This can really sneak up on us and we don't even know. And from my own experience, when I was in the corporate world and working at Deloitte, actually as a management consultant there, I actually was brought into the company to create a business division, which I grew to be the global market leader. And at some point, and I've been running the business for just probably about 12 years, I decided to take a sabbatical and go traveling. It was on the first day of that sabbatical when I finally stopped. I was actually on a ranch in Colorado and I was sitting on the deck on a swing seat and had just stopped and done everything, that I finally realized I was burnt out. And I hadn't known until that point. And so often this is what we see. We ignore the natural rhythms and we keep going and going until the point that we get burnt out. Let's look a little bit at these mistakes in a little bit more detail. Mistake number 1, the silo syndrome. So just like a herd of horses needs to move as one unit to survive, our business teams need to seamlessly collaborate. Yet in many organizations, we unknowingly create these barriers that fragment teams. And we've all seen the situation of we have all these different departments, HR, operations, logistics, finance. And because people are in their own individual teams, they forget the need to collaborate together. And yet we need everyone to collaborate together. And so we get this situation, just like the little rowing boat on the screen here, where everybody is pulling in different directions and we don't get the results that we wanted. So how can we identify silo syndrome? We see departments operating in isolation, like I've just alluded to. The thing that we also see is this information hoarding. How many of you have come across that in your organizations or businesses where one team's got a piece of information, but they decide not to share it with everyone else? And that's because we've got a lack of cross-functional communication. And teams get focused solely on their own goals. And this is one of the challenges in some of the metrics that we have in place in business, where each team is so wedded to the results of their own individual department, often sometimes because bonuses are reliant on the success and meeting budgets with their own individual teams, that they don't think about how can we work together, because actually the business success is the overall business succeeding. And if one department does that at the expense of another, then actually we're not really meeting the business goals. So what I'd love to see actually within organizations is some focus on collaborative goals as well for the whole organization, and a limited understanding of other departments' challenges, and actually how by hoarding information we can actually stop another department being able to do their job. So what are some of the hidden costs of this silo syndrome? They are reduced organizational agility, duplicated effort, missed opportunities for innovation, lower employee engagement, and decreased customer satisfaction. Because I'm sure many of you have been a customer where you're trying to get something sorted and the customer representative goes, "It's not my department. I can't do anything about that." And you just get so frustrated. I had a situation recently with my mobile phone company where I changed mobile phones, and it didn't tell me that if I went for an eSIM, which I thought was being very environmentally friendly, it would terminate the service immediately. So I spent a long time with the customer service teams trying to get my phone reinstated. And they were like, "Oh, it's not my department. I can't do anything." And it was just so frustrating as a consumer. What are some of the warning signs then that we've got this hidden cost happening of silo syndrome? We might see it in what we typically call the us v them mentality, or me versus we mentality, where people don't share anything and it's all about me and my team, and it's very ego driven rather than ecosystem driven. We're seeing minimal cross-departmental meetings. We're seeing a resistance to helping others. And we're seeing teams using different communication channels so they don't get in touch with each other, and really a lack of shared celebration within the organization. So I'm just going to come into the room in a moment and we can just have a chat about this. But what are some of the natural solutions out there for breaking down barriers? And I'd love you to come up with some other ideas as well. It's about embracing the we economy mindset. Like I said, moving from me to we. It's about learning from herd dynamics and how in the horse herds, for example, all the horses collaborate together. They know that as a prey animal, if a horse lives by itself, it has to stay awake 24/7 because otherwise it's going to be somebody's dinner. So how do we get within the organization that fact that we need to all collaborate together for success and create this seamless unity across teams? So one of the ways that we can start thinking about that is how do we establish cross-functional projects to actually force our team members in the initial stages to start working together? And how do we create these shared goals and metrics, and then have maybe regular team rotation programs or mentoring partnerships across departments to get everybody working together? So I'd love just to hear from some of you. What are some of your thoughts on this silo impact? Where have you seen it happening, or what can you take away from what I've just shared to do things differently? Shout out, please. You're welcome to, because we're a small group. It saves people typing in the chat.
I can go ahead. Yeah, I'm involved in a business at the moment and arrived just looking at what they're doing. And everybody seems to be working in silos, as you said. They do have numerous different communication channels instead of all using Teams, which is the corporate one that's set up. And from what I understand, I've only been here 24 hours. The people are blaming each other. When you're trying to delve into what's happening to their department, it's always somebody else's fault. So, in terms of solutions, it will be to streamline their communication in the next 24 hours, to set up some team goals for them, and to take away the blame culture of other departments. That's what I'm aiming to do. And that's why I joined this call, to get a few more tips.
And Mark, I'm happy to have a call on the side afterwards, and with any of you afterwards. I'll show you a way to do that. Yeah. So you're calling. So you're actually in Serbia at the moment, are you?
Yes, I am. I just arrived on Sunday.
Wow. Excellent. And you probably need to even go one step further back to is get to purpose, get them all on the same page in what's the purpose of the business? What do we want to achieve? Because that's going to help pull them all together. Otherwise, this team's, I need to do this and I need to do this. So you might even chunk it up another level. So what's the purpose of the business and why are we here? And what do we need to do?
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else got any thoughts? You're welcome. Anyone else got any thoughts they want to share?
So I've got a similar one to Mark's one, where I had this constant, we're very big on focusing on trying to break down barriers. So we're at the moment really looking at every single improvement initiative I've said has to be cross-functional and bring in finance, which is quite a radical thing. But what I'm most astounded by is, as like Mark, everyone, particularly our manufacturing sites, will talk about how it's customer support, it's the back office, it's headquarters fault. This is not working, that's not working. So my challenge to them is, have you actually told them? And I actually have become quite arsy about it, because I'm like, listen, we don't have a lesson on mind reading or ESP. So you guys, you need to be pulling those together and start thinking as internal customers. Identify who is your internal customer, and when you're doing your measures, you do customer measures as well as your delivery measures, for instance. So taking it a little bit, because the whole QCD kind of thing is great, but I think it's a little dated because people always think external customer and whatever. So I'm getting them to think more internal customer and do that feedback. And I say, don't come bleating to me with your problems if you haven't actually told your customer what's going on, or your supplier.
Absolutely.
What's going on.
Yeah, I was going to say that customer is in the broadest sense of all stakeholders, right, Georgina? Everybody. Yeah, because we just assume people know what's going on and that we're frustrated, and we don't even tell them. And that's why there's this, I know that we don't want to have an obscene amount of meetings because most of us have too many, but we're having the wrong meetings and the wrong conversations within business right now. So therein lies the challenge. So now let's look at number 2, which is the control trap. I'd just like you to imagine this. I imagine trying to control half a ton of horse through force alone. It simply doesn't work. And yet in business, we often see leaders clutching at the reins too tightly, creating resistance instead of flow. And I get this. I understand why this happens. I know when, and I'll put up my hands and say, when I was at Arthur Andersen and Deloitte, it was my I was what we called an entrepreneur. I created my own business unit within the structure of the larger organizations, and it was really my baby, and I wanted to control it and keep it safe and make everything work well together. But what I started to realize was I was stifling the creativity of my team within that. And also the business couldn't grow more than me. I only had a limited capacity. So I really recognize how this control trap happens within business. And particularly if you're a founder or really early on in the stages of business. So how do we identify the sorts of behaviors that cause this? It's that micromanaging daily operations, which at the outset, I think I got 5 gold stars at being able to do that really well, which wasn't helpful. It's about insisting being involved in every decision. And why do we insist on that? Because we don't trust our people to make the right decisions. It's about rigid adherence to hierarchical structures. Sometimes there's also this resistance to employee-led initiatives where we've got to remember, our team have a wealth of ideas and solutions. So particularly for Georgina and Mark, the team members know how to solve these problems. We just need to give them a bit of direction and the opportunity to have the conversations they need to have. Because often they'll have way better ideas than we will. And this also talks into this whole concept of having diverse perspectives, because what both of you have described is one department's got a completely different view on what's happening from another department's. And actually, there's a richness in that we can all learn from each other, but we've got to have those conversations, like you said. And also the control trap is that fear of delegating important tasks. We keep all the really juicy projects to ourselves. And that's really demotivating to team members that want to grow and expand because they don't get an opportunity to get empowered and take on responsibility themselves. So the unintended consequences of this control trap are diminished creativity and innovation, reduced employee initiative, slower decision making, increased stress level, and lower team confidence. And so some of the warning signs that we know that we've got this control trap going on can come in things like high employee turnover rates. So people leaving because they're feeling micromanaged, they're feeling stifled, that they can't grow and develop. And research is showing, and with 25% of the organization now being Gen Z, they're looking for rapid development. I don't know how many times I've heard a Gen Z say they don't want to put in the graft, they want to get promoted. So we need to give them opportunities to grow and develop by giving them really interesting projects to do. Other warning signs are this lack of proactive problem solving, where teams are just, exactly as some of you have said, just blaming each other. They don't actually want to go out and find the solution themselves. There's minimal input from team members because often team members aren't feeling psychologically safe to share what's going on. So they're like, I'm not going to put up an idea because it just gets shot down every time. Nobody listens to me. So team members feeling like they don't have a voice. It can also come from excessive reporting requirements and meeting overload. So what's the natural solution here is to really adopt adaptive leadership principles and allow the leadership roles to shift based on strengths. And how about building trust through authenticity and enabling the natural communication patterns? So what do we need to do? What are some practical things we can do? We need to delegate authority, not just tasks. I think this is really important because when we're actually asking people to do things, we do need to delegate the authority to them as well so that they can get things done. And then team members are going to feel more empowered and motivated. We need to create these safe spaces for experimentation, encourage autonomous decision making, and build trust through consistency as well. So let me just stop sharing again and let's see, has anyone got any comments that you'd like to make on that? Maybe hear from somebody who hasn't spoken. Anyone resonate with this challenge of the control syndrome going on?
Yes, Julia. Sorry, I'm Ben. I'm working the.
Hi, Ben. Nice to see you.
And thank you very much for this opportunity. And I apologise for joining late. Things happen.
It's all right, no problem.
I'm certainly seeing a lot of this across the NHS.
All right.
Particularly where there is an expertise held at a very senior level, and that expertise is not necessarily reflected in the bigger picture across a wide variety of different areas amongst the team. And so therefore the person at the top wishes to make sure that everything that goes out, all communication that goes out, must be signed off by them. And what this has delivered is a whole team of people who therefore don't finalize documents, don't finalize communications, because they know it's going to be corrected by someone else, therefore putting more pressure on the person at the top. And so with a lot of delay in release of documents, or certainly things being delivered late because they now have to be changed much more by the senior people who have less time, and therefore effectiveness is being reduced across the board. Of course, these senior people don't want to release that authority to communicate now because they've seen the quality is not good, and therefore they're frightened of reducing their own standing by having their team release stuff. So it becomes a vicious circle, which must be broken by a new person coming in and just releasing it and accepting errors. But it's just not happened yet.
Yeah. Deborah, I see you strongly agreeing with everything that Ben's saying there.
I've been chewing my cheek as to when or what to say. Recent experiences where working in very fast-moving organizations, very lean organizations, but coming in to increase and highlight the functionality that they've been missing, without saying too much, and finding that the skills of the team that in one particular area have actually been in need of upskilling massively. So whilst I've gone in with you know what you need to do it, just no surprises, please. No, as far as possible, no surprises. It has been occasionally a real kind of burn moment that has appeared. So it has its costs, and the dance to get the upskilling, particularly when, as I say, extremely fast, very lean, with a regulatory requirement to meet, then those dynamics are really quite difficult to tangle with. And when all the teams are distributed, it's I think that's what we're dealing with in contemporary organizations for the most part now, and that's quite a tricky one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Ben, I so resonate with what you were talking about, because that toxic organization that I worked in was exactly that situation, not the NHS, but everyone was afraid, literally afraid of the leader, the owner of the business. There was no trust. And actually what I witnessed there, even just in the 6 months I was there as a contractor to them, was that the team members were just doing less and less, because they're like, what's the point? It's going to get changed anyway. So yeah, you get this vicious circle, and it's only going to get changed by building trust and helping create that psychological safety, so people know it's okay to try something, and we won't always get it right. But in the way that business needs to go now, I think we have to see business as a huge experiment. I know obviously in the NHS, we've got people's lives in the fray. So there's bits that we can't experiment in, but out with of that, we definitely can. And we have to, because otherwise we're just never going to be able to move and be agile enough. And with this speed of reinvention where things need to change so quickly in order to keep organizations agile, we know organizations like the NHS and others are still a bit in the twilight zone, but it's a massive ask to really try and move the Titanic almost to get it on the right track.
I'm very keen on trying to tell people that it's the strength of a leader is actually in developing their team, not on having control of their team. And therefore, you should, at the final point, as a leader, you should be able to sit back and just watch everyone else deliver what you've wanted. So you just have to work out rather than in. But that's not really landing very well at the moment.
And the problem is, I remember saying to people, actually, your job as a leader is to effectively make your role redundant, because you've actually empowered all of your team members to do your role. And I remember we're at that situation in corporate where I was like, I can't hire this person. They're smarter than me. They're better than me. I don't want to give everything away, because what would I get to do? But when I did get to that point, I got to do really new, exciting things, like expand the business into new verticals and things like that, which is what really resonated with me. But I had to give it all away in order to find the new opportunities for myself to grow and for everyone else to grow. But it's quite a mindset challenge. I get that for people. And particularly in the tough economic climate where people are maybe worried about jobs longer term and what they're going to get. So let's just quickly jump into this last slide. So the third mistake here is the burnout blind spot. So in my herd of horses here, there's a beautiful rhythm of rest and activity. The horses know they have to conserve their energy for times of flight when they have to get away from the danger. And in everything in nature undulates, has a rhythm. It has times for being on the peak, times for resting. And so it has that natural cadence to it. And that's what we don't see in the modern workplace. We're really pushing against the natural rhythms and creating exhaustion instead of sustainable energy. And it's no surprise that when we die, our heartbeat flatlines, right? But most of us are going along pedal to the metal, 25,000 miles an hour with none of this cadence happening within our lives. And this is what's causing such burnout for people. What are some of the reasons that we identify the burnout blind spot? It's constant high pressure environments, ignoring early warning signs of team fatigue, an overemphasis on productivity metrics, a lack of recovery periods, and a disconnection from those natural work rhythms. Everything in nature has a rhythm to it. The sun comes up in the morning, it goes down at night. We've got all the seasons. Everything around us in the world has rhythms. And yet in business, we've tried to think that we could become immune to that and not have natural rhythms and just keep people working, as I said, pedal to the metal all of the time. And the damage of this is that we get decreased team creativity, higher error rates, increased conflict, lower engagement levels, and compromised decision making. So how do we really see this happening in the workplace? We've already talked a little bit about it, maybe the lack of voluntary contribution. People just don't have the energy to give to anything else. Maybe there's an increased irritability in the team interactions. There's a diminished enthusiasm for new projects, maybe reduced attendance at team events and a reduced quality of work. So the natural solution is to create sustainable team energy. And this is about respecting the natural cycles of work and rest, ensuring our team members take vacations. And that's a big problem, actually. There's a lot of people that are just so busy, they're not even taking their annual vacations. And there have been companies in the US that are actually paying people to take their vacations because they know it's so important. And it all comes down to modeling healthy boundaries about what we can and can't do and building resilient team practices. So some things that you can do to implement this back in the workplace is create positive feedback loops to let people know how they're doing and get feedback on what's going on. This is about having continual one-to-ones with your team members so we really understand what's going on with their workload. So many of the people I coach, middle managers, I find are particularly in a stressful position here. Because of the lack of collaboration, they're getting work coming in from loads and loads of different people, and none of them are brave enough to say no. And then they're just drowning in all the work that they've got. So we've got to ensure that we build recovery positions for them. You think about business a little bit like a sport. An athlete doesn't keep training all the time. They have periods of rest and relaxation, and they have a cadence. So we need to think about that in business as well. We need to establish clear boundaries, encourage independent thinking, and remove any unnecessary rules that drain their energy. Okay, I'm very conscious that we're at the end of time, so my apologies for that. So yeah, no problem, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So let me stop sharing here for a moment. So how does that resonate with anyone? Say something, David. You look like you are.
Yeah, I find this quite interesting because in the area that I work within the NHS England, which is the administrative side of the strategy and policy part of the NHS, I don't see this at all. And maybe I've got a blind spot to it. I accept that. I don't see burnout as an issue. It's much more about what time off that people are entitled to and taking that. And that's all fine. And I think that's just right. Of course, on the other side, the client delivery or the patient services side, we're seeing a lot more of that, where people are emotionally involved in their jobs, their careers, making sure that they deliver, and the stress they're on, not only externally put upon them, but that's internal as well. I can't leave my patient like this, knowing that the next shift is short-staffed, for instance, or doing much more than they're really capable of doing. And that builds tiredness and errors, and we're seeing this play out across all areas of the NHS. So I think there is a slight dichotomy here, and I don't have a business understanding. So if in the business world, where you've got both stakeholders and financial drivers, those sort of things are not probably the same that I'm seeing from our public organisation. But I'll be really interested to hear about how that is driving stress in the team.
If I can just share, I've done a lot of coaching with the NHS in middle managers, and I think they would disagree. They're always telling me how stressed and burnt out they are. So it is quite interesting to see that. And people within the NHS super dedicated to what needs to get done and going the extra mile and keep going the extra mile. So it's quite interesting.
I think people have a different understanding of the stress. And I don't think that in the central bodies there is the same level of stress that I'm seeing both in private organizations, in business, or on the front line. The stress that I see is really light, but it affects people in different ways. So it's much more than they may have had last year, and therefore they perceive it as being a huge amount of stress. And we are losing people to stress, either temporarily or fully. But I'm not sure it's the same. We would have the same understanding of stress that you might have seen in other organizations.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in? I think
please,
it's a health warning, excuse the pun, but I have a slight problem with that comparison where we say one person's stress is worse than someone else's stress, because everybody has their own stress triggers. Now, I do a lot of work with back office functions, and you would think, come on, what's your biggest problem? Like in a finance team, you got to do your monthly close of books, and it comes every month, so you just put in the hours, and you think that's not the same as saving someone's life. Or in my husband's case, he's a barrister and he's trying to get sort of someone who he thinks is innocent off from a life sentence. But they are different levels of stress, and you get a lot in the back office functions. They get undermined and under focused on. And so the stress they have there is that repetitive click, tick, ticking away, where they just become completely disengaged. And that's why you get so many of the back office functions just going to the point that I made earlier, and that Mark alluded to as well, and that they go, this is not working, I'm not going to do it again. This is not working, I'm not going to do it again. And I have had experience with the NHS where in the procurement team, in the transactional areas, when they review the bid, they are stressed and they don't look at the common sense, but they're told it's nothing compared to saving a life. I just think you have to be so super careful on what is deemed as stress and how those areas function.
I do have the blind spot.
Sorry, we didn't mean to beat you up, Ben. And of course, stress is different for everyone, right? What is stress for one person isn't for somebody else. So that's what also makes it more difficult. It's not like there's this line and when we're above it, then we're stressed, and when we're below it, we're not. Those lines are at different levels for everybody, depending on what's going on in their life and everything else, which is what makes this such a challenging topic to discuss. I'm conscious we're at time. I just want to share this one last thing with you to give you something to think about, because obviously the solution here is to create a game-changing team. And there's 3 components that you probably want to think about having within your game-changing team. Let's just share this. So the first thing we really need to build is that game-changing trust. So we're really asking the question there, how can we remove the barriers between our teams? And for a little bit of a self-assessment, why don't you just rank yourself? What do you think your team has? A level 1 to 2 is a silo mentality. We're moving through limited interaction to sporadic collaboration to seamless unity. So just put in the chat where you think you are on that scale for game-changing trust. Number 4, that means seamless. You're at scale number 4, so limited interaction. Okay, you're at 7, sporadic collaboration. Thank you. Okay, anyone else wants to put them in? We just share the second one then. So impactful contribution, we always want to think about how do we enable our team members to bring their best self to work? And again, are they bringing minimal effort, partially engaged, growing commitment, or purposeful alignment? So maybe you want to score yourselves on those as well. The impactful contribution, I think, is one of the most really relevant ones here, because this is all about how do we get team members to bring themselves to work and help them understand what the contribution is that they make and the impact they make in the workplace. And that can be massively motivational for people when they understand that. So with those of you, Georgina and Mark, with your kind of siloed teams, once the team really understand how their role fits into the bigger picture, that's why I said you might want to chunk up Mark to purpose, they can really see what they're doing how it impacts the whole. And you think about that John F. Kennedy, when he went to talk to the janitor at NASA and asked the janitor what he did. And he said, my role is to put somebody on the moon, because that's what he understood, what his contribution was. Cleaning and looking after the space station where they do the spaceships was really important to make everything happen. So everyone's role counts. Last question you want to check in with is, how can we help our people embrace change without burnout? And again, we're moving from steadfast resistance to cautiously responsive, to embracing agility, to radical reinvention. So what we've identified there are the 3 key areas that we need to have aligned in order to create a game-changing team, which is game-changing trust, impactful contribution, and unbridled adaptability. So I just want to share with you quickly a model of how we can do this. We call this the Unbridled Leadership Momentum Blueprint. And as you can see in the center, we have the massive business momentum, and it is underpinned there by the 3 petals of game-changing trust, unbridled adaptability, and impactful contribution. And the pillars that are really driving this performance are at the top: holistic partnerships. This is all about the relationships that we build within the organization and moving the culture from this ego to echo, from this me to we environment. The second pillar that we have is harnessed energy. And this is about how do we manage the energy within our people, within our environment, and really leverage the energy so it is working in an optimal fashion. And the paradigm shift we're making here is moving things from chaos to coherence, where everything is aligned and working together synchronistically. I really love the analogy here. If you look at a swarm of birds, a swarm of swallows flying, you notice none of them ever bash into each other, right? They absolutely understand what their space is and how they contribute to the whole energy. And we call this entrainment, when everything is moving together synergistically like this. And then the final pillar is healthy curiosity. This is all about moving us from confusion to clarity by asking better questions. So this is the unbridled leadership momentum model that really helps move the business forward and get our teams to work more effectively together. And I'd just like to finally share this with you, which is you might want to reflect on where you are today and where you'd like to be in 12 months' time. And one thing is for sure, that I'm sure that most of you would like to have turbocharged teams that are operating in this very collaborative way. They're purposeful, they're aligned, and everyone is highly engaged. And that's probably the best state that we can get in terms of our teams. Some people might be prepared to accept these tolerable teams where the team gets on, it's not being as effective as it could be, and it could do better, but things are all right. However, below the line, we drop into troubled teams where we've got conflict, high levels of disengagement, and people not working effectively together. And then the worst situation that our teams could be in is this toxic culture, the one I alluded to earlier on that I experienced at some point during my career. And the thing is that if we look today at 12 months' time out, if we don't do anything today, the result is that we will probably end up with a toxic team environment. And this is just due to a concept called drift, because if we don't take action, then that's naturally what happens. And maybe things won't be as bad for you as getting into a toxic team. You could just end up with a troubled team. Better still would be a tolerable team. And of course, the ideal scenario would be a turbocharged team. But you've got to make a decision and take action if you want to get that turbocharged team. It's not just going to happen magically by itself. So we can see there's 4 points here on this graph. And the question is, the decision you need to make is, which one do you want to be at? Because the longer we take to make a decision about what we're going to do in terms of improving our team performance, it becomes more riskier, it becomes harder, and it becomes costlier. Because the reality here right now is that today, is the closest distance between these two lines. So if you are thinking that you might be drifting towards a toxic environment, right now, today, is the easiest time for you to jump lines and get onto that turbocharged line. And we do that by using the Unbridled Leadership Momentum model. And this is a proven model that's helped other organizations move from this place of uncertainty about how the team's operating and suboptimal performance to this turbocharged desire. So once we get you onto the turbocharged line, we help you ride that curve in order to get there. And we do that by consistently helping you implement the model along the way so that you can get acceleration. And of course, if you want to do things faster and accelerate your performance, there are other options of working with us that can really turbocharge your performance to the next level in the shortest period possible. So really the decision that you need to make today is how long are you prepared to wait in order to get a different outcome in your business? Because we've always got to remember that teamwork remains the ultimate competitive advantage because it is so powerful and so rare. I love these words of Patrick Lencioni. Teamwork is powerful, but it's so rare. And this is why I'm always talking about teamwork being the competitive superpower that we've got in businesses that few business leaders are really harnessing to their full potential. So if any of this sounds interesting, I'd love to invite you to book into a session with me. And my diary's on the screen, calendly.com, juliafelton/discovery. So you can learn more about how we can help you avoid the 3 mistakes that unintentionally destroy team dynamics and instead create turbocharged teams that deliver massive business momentum. So please do book in a discovery call at calendly.com/juliafelton/discovery. And on that call, we'll just talk about your team, where it is, what's going on, and how you can make a difference. And we'll give you some strategies and tactics that you can implement straight away. So I hope you found this useful today, and please do stay connected with me either on LinkedIn. That's probably where I met a number of you. We're also on X, formerly known as Twitter, and Facebook, or you reach out to me directly at julia@businesshorsepower.com, or you can also check out our whole range of services on our website, businesshorsepower.com. Or even be brave, pick up the phone and have a call with me. I always love talking to people as well. So thank you so much for your time and attention today. I hope you found that valuable. And if you would really like to book in a call, please remember to do so at calendly.com, juliafelton/discovery. And I really look forward to speaking with you then. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.